Your full name?
Alexander Frederick Werner, Jr.
And you got that name from whom?
From my father. He's senior.
Okay, but where did the name come from in the family after your father, before your father?
Well, my father's name was Julius, and he came from Russia back in 1904 and 1905. And he met his wife over in Poland as a stopover. And they came over to the United States in the early 1900s and got married. My father was born in 1912, and my mother in 1915. Her parents came from Poland, and they all resided in the South Bronx, 167th Street and Webster Avenue. And my sister was born in 1944. She's since deceased, and I was born in 1947.
What was your sister's name?
Alexandra. See, I guess this Alexander thing was, I don't know if it was an ego thing or whatever, but but her nickname was Sandra, Sandy.
All right, there's power in the name.
There was another sister, a sibling of ours that who was born, I believe, in 1941, and she passed away due to polio. So that kind of really upset, of course, my mom and dad. And then my sister came on, and then I came on as the last.
Okay, this is the last of
the immediate family. Right?
Are your folks still with you?
No, they're deceased also.
Okay, how long ago did that
happen? Well, my sister passed away in 1995, and my folks passed away in 1997. After we were in the Bronx, I had attended St. Albert's Elementary School, and then went to Mount St. Michael's Academy, and then I enrolled in St. John's University in Queens, and I believe because of that, my folks were looking to move from the Bronx, and they went and bought a house in Whitestone, Queens. In 1965, we moved there, and I continued commuting to St. John's, and they then moved in 1974 to Cape Coral, Florida. So they had been.
Both died in the same year.
They both died in the same year. Supposedly from what the doctor said, my father from a broken heart.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Do you ever visit the old neighborhood? Have you gone back to the Bronx?
I've taken my wife Karen and some mutual friends for a joyride after we've gone to the Museum of Natural History or the Museum of Art, because we like to go down into the city maybe once every 2 or 3 months, and then go up to City Island for lunch. So my old hangout was Orchard Beach, and I took them up a couple of times, and when we went through the neighborhood, they were kind of shocked, but yet, from what they understood about the Bronx, it really wasn't shocking. They couldn't imagine us living in a tenement building, back in those days. But so I told them it was pretty neat because everybody was together, the families were tight, everybody looked after the kids. We played stickball.
Do you see a change in the neighborhood from then to now? Do you see?
Oh, it's a total disaster. Yeah, there's bars on windows. A lot of the only thing left standing in the area is the old Kingdom Come Hall of the Jehovah Witnesses. And I still remember every Sunday around 2 o'clock, you could hear the minister from my grandmother's window preaching, and you'd have all of the people from 2 blocks down. They would be coming up into our neighborhood, so to speak. And everybody got along. We all exchanged pleasantries, and we just couldn't play stickball on that afternoon, because sometimes the Spalding ball would fly into their backyard, an alleyway, and of course we'd like to climb over the fence because they were 25 cents at the time, and the soda shops would close in the afternoon, so you couldn't buy another ball. So we'd have to wait till all the ceremonies were over, and then we'd go back in the street around 4 o'clock.
Alex, how old were your folks when they passed away?
My mother was 80, and my father was 85.
Did they both continue to speak their native languages? I mean,
yes, they did. Yes, Polish, German, and no, my parents tried to get me to do that, I guess, when I was in elementary school, and the nuns were a Polish order, and but I was struggling since I was an altar boy, believe it or not, for 9 years, how to figure out how to say the Confiteor in Latin, let alone try to figure out how to say, speak in Polish.
Where was the school that you...
155th Street.
Did they teach Polish in the school?
Yes, they did.
So you opted not to take it?
Well, I got by, I just got by.
Okay.
My mother was a part of the women's club, so you get a little perks on that, okay? And since I was an altar boy, I got by. You know, they give you the old 65 or 70 just to, get you by.
Now, did Russian play any part in your early?
It was close. The language was close. Dajmi Bože and Nazdravje and things along those lines, little phrases that come up.
Okay.
But the Russian aspect and also some of the German aspect were kind of hidden from a lot of the family because of World War II and also World War One. When Karen did a genealogy of the family, there was some concern about getting a visa and coming over here legally or whatnot in terms of some of the Russian soldiers, and also then being expatriated back if they wanted to be back to Russia. So everybody kept quiet about where. In fact, my own birth certificate was forged in order for me to get into the Catholic school at a certain age, which we found out. They had me a year older than I was supposed to be.
When were you born, actually?
I was born in 1947, because I wouldn't say that differently. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here collecting my pension right now. I'd have to work another year.
I'm going to ask you this for the record. When you met Karen,
Right.
How did that happen? Was that during your professional life, or was that prior to your?
I met her when I was an administrator over at Northeast, and she was a sixth grade teacher.
Okay, so we'll get to that in a little while. I just want to get that in there right now. That's to come.
Okay.
Tell me about your dad, his personality, his qualities, his skills.
He was a New York City fireman, and his fire department was down on Willis Avenue, 133rd Street, in the Bronx. My mom was a bookkeeper, worked for Wallach's. Also, they had her do some bookkeeping for Hartshafter and Marks, and that entered into the play because she liked to take care of family members, her nieces and nephews, and try to get them part-time jobs through the retail outlet. So I ended up working in Wallach's, and I guess it was 1964, in a credit department, and I was a credit collector. So I was one of those guys, if you were at the point in time looking to buy a $400 suit, and on a Saturday afternoon to impress your girlfriend, and you had a outstanding loan of $300 or $400, and you didn't pay $10 at least, okay, for that month, the salesperson would call me up and say, "Can I release the garment to this person?" I say, "No." And they wouldn't know that I was only 17 or 18 on the other side of the phone. I said, "He has to come up with some cash. No checks, because they bounce. I don't trust the guy."
So you got some very early training.
Very early training in people skills.
In making the tough calls.
Yeah, and also I always like numbers, okay, and so to some degree I decided maybe I'd research getting involved in business or what have you. That's the direction my mother and father were pushing me into. Although deep down when I went to high school, I like reading science fiction, and I also like reading history. And I always envisioned myself maybe becoming a history teacher. But when I took courses in history on the collegiate level, I wasn't really impressed that much with the professors or what have you. So, and also I was juggling my part-time work schedule with my college schedule. So it looked like I was drifting in the area of going into business management training or what have you.
Now, did you say you did that work at St. John's?
While I was at St. John's, while I was attending college, I was able to manipulate my schedule and have like 2 days out of the week off.
Did you do all your work at St. John's? Did you do your graduate work there?
Yes, I did my undergraduate work. I was able to get my undergraduate degree in 3.5 years. I majored in business management, and then I went right to the graduate level school and received a master's in finance. But while I was in graduate school, I guess it was 1967, 68, one of my friends was talking about picking up a part-time job because I was still waiting. I wasn't making enough money in terms of the work that I was doing for Wallach, so I tried to get involved in the Hartshafter and Marks management training program and go out to Chicago because my mother knew the executives in the company at Wallach's. And they put a freeze on any action on that, so I was kind of left holding the bag. So I was also over the summer working with the Long Island Press and supervising circulation routes. and helping kids collect the money, getting the papers out, getting everything squared away. And I found the kids to be pretty funny. And it started to bring back memories about, working with kids type of thing. And then one of my friends over, I remember a soda in the cafeteria at St. John's on a Saturday afternoon, said he was able to get a permanent sub-certificate out of the city of New York by taking 9 credits, any 9 teaching credits. And he was able to get a $9,000 teaching job, and he could still continue his work at St. John's on a graduate level. So I said, wow, that's pretty cool. So what do you have to do? So he said, well, you go down to whatever, I guess, I don't think it was Livingston Street. It was one of the local public schools, and you receive an application, you fill it out, you take a test, and then you are examined before the Board of Examiners at the time, and you demonstrate a lesson. So I did one of those things. And then I got a teaching certificate. This was back in the spring of 1968. And I didn't know what I was going to do with that teaching certificate. My father said you could throw it away, and I said no. I think I may want to pursue this. He had been retired on disability from the fire department back in 1959, and then he couldn't take retirement for longer than a year. So he then hooked up as a security person with the Dollar Savings Bank, and that was his second career. So he had banking, and he had all these other things in back of his mind. But I said, no, I think I may want to do this. I was going out with a girl in Rosedale, Queens at the time, and she was looking to become a nurse. So she was looking at nursing schools and nursing programs. One of them was in Bellevue in New York. The other was out at Pilgrim State. They still ran a nursing program. So I said, where's Pilgrim State? She said, in Brentwood. I said, where's Brentwood? So we looked on a map, and I got the idea that I had to hang around for 2 hours while she was being interviewed over in Pilgrim State. She didn't drive, so I drove her up here. So I looked up the teaching. Of course, again, somebody told me, well, they're hiring out on Long Island also, but maybe not for $9,000 a year. So I said, okay. So I looked in the directory, and I saw Brentwood Public Schools, and I called up, and they said, yeah, they were looking for some teachers, elementary teachers. So I said, oh, okay. So what do you need? So what do you have? So I said, well, I just got this permanent sub-certificate from New York. Well, if you can work in New York City, you can work out here. So 1968, late July of 68. So I dropped her off at Pilgrim State and went over to this little old building, okay, Third Avenue, what have you. And I go in, and it's like a little shack with these little cubby holes, and it looked like a boiler room type of operation, There's this guy that looked like Abe Lincoln, who was Art Brega. There was this other guy that was kind of running around with a frenzied thing. I found out later he was Jerry Smith. There was this Italian guy who I thought, was a member of the Mothers and Fathers Association. He turned out to be the superintendent, this guy Nannini. And then there was Tom Hastings, a nice guy, white hair. And he sat me down, and he said, tell me a little bit about your background. So I just told him, just like I told you right now, a little bit about background. And he said, well, sometimes you can find your career in different ways, and things happen. So this might be your lucky day. So I said, really? So he gets on the phone, and he calls up this person named Carmine Puglio. And I said, what am I getting into here? This Godfather type over here is Carmine Puglio. I mean, Abe Lincoln sitting next to us. So he said, yeah, I have an opening for a third-grade teacher. Why don't you send this young person over? So he said, here's the directions how to get to Twin Pines. So I ride over to Twin Pines, and I talked to him for about 45 minutes to an hour. And he says, I just have a gut level feeling. You're green, you're young, you're inexperienced, but you might be able to do the job. So hang on a second. So he calls up Hastings, and he says, give the guy a contract. So Hastings says, that's good. That was my impression too, because I could hear them talking on the phone. So I go back, and then he introduces me to Abe Lincoln, who was Arthur Brega. He introduces me to Jerry Smith. He introduces me to some other guy, Dr. Smith, and PPS, whatever that means, okay? Nannini comes in, wants to say, welcome on board, that kind of thing. So I said, wow, hey, this is great, okay? So I said, okay, I got to leave. Don't you want to go out or anything and get a cup of coffee? He said, no, I got a girlfriend over at Pilgrim State looking for a nursing type of deal. So I got to pick her up and go back to Queens. I said, okay. So I said, what do I do next? So I said, well, you call up the principal when you can get into the building and start setting up your class and do what you got to do. So went home and I told my folks, and my father wasn't really too thrilled. Again, like I said, he wanted, the basic kind of stuff. And my mother said, oh, Al, leave him alone. He knows what he's doing. Okay, that type of thing. And my girlfriend at the time ended up in Bellevue nursing program. So I then went out in August. Of course, Mr. Pulio said, give me a call the second week in August, and that's when most of the teachers come in. They start setting up their rooms, and the custodians will finish with whatever. And I went in, and I started to put my room together. I mean, I didn't really know much about any of it other than some of the nice people that were there at the time. Doug Lennon, he was a sixth grade teacher. Charlie Smith, who since retired, he was a sixth grade teacher. Mary White, who was Mary Mento. Okay, she was a second grade teacher who's retired. Karen Bloomfield, who's retired, but she was a first grade teacher at the time. They were there, and they kind of gave me some information on how to do things and what stores to go to get things and what is necessary. Ask for the class list. You send a welcome letter to the kids and all this other stuff. The secretary, Angie Valente, at the time was also a doll. She kind of took me under her wing also, and kind of gave me, the information in terms of what I had to do and that kind of thing. So I had a lot of support, a lot of help from the faculty there, and
Still,
it was fun.
It was a time of continuing growth in Brentwood.
Yes. If I remember, Twin Pines, we had about 500, 600 kids. And next door at Pine Park, that was a K-6 school also. And I had about 600 kids. Herb Fishman. When I hold that thought, 600, and when I came back to Twin Pines as principal, and I left it last year, we had almost 900 kids, and how to squeeze everybody in there, it was amazing. Of course, we didn't have all the different programs back then that we do now. We didn't have resource room. You had special ed, but you had to be throwing bricks through windows and driving cars when you were 8 in order to get into the program. It was more emotionally disturbed than anything else. And we did have a bilingual program because our bilingual population was small, but it was larger than some of the others. Ellie Bishopberger was a slight little thing. She was the mom, okay, of that particular program in the building. And that's when I also met Nikki Brash, who was in charge of the overall program at the time. And we didn't have a reading lab. We didn't have a math lab. Those things really weren't even thought about. Although that was at the tail end, from what I found out later on, of all the funding that was coming in from the Ford Foundation, that Vincent Presno from Social Studies Department got involved in, Ray Fournier from Language Arts, Kat and Deller, I believe, from Music. So the arts type. Well, also the nature of the kids being what they are, you let them loose for 80 minutes and they're going to go bonkers on you. So when the issue of having monitors came up, we pretty much made a statement saying that would be a good thing because it would take that aspect off of our shoulders and it would be incorporated into giving us more curriculum. So instead of 80, you got it down to 50 minutes, 40 minutes for us and a 10-minute overlap. And that's the way it has always worked out ever since then. 50-minute lunch period for the elementary. Okay. Now we didn't have preps on a consistent basis as it is now with one a day. Back in those days, you could have 2 or 3 based upon how the schedule was made up. You still had your phys ed, you had your music, and you had your art, but sometimes you can have it all in one day. And we kind of thought that was strange. But what was interesting when the population was still increasing, but somehow the money force it was shutting down. Okay, the central administration was looking at this aspect of do the specialist work the same amount of time as the regular classroom teachers when you add up their hours? And that was kind of a split that was kind of thrown into the union as far as that's concerned. Because if you look at a phys ed teacher, and some days, based upon a schedule, they could waltz out of there with 200 minutes. And now if they're not coaching, what do they do for the rest of the time? And I don't think there was such a thing as bus duty or anything along those lines that were put in there. That was on a volunteer basis. Okay. So there was that was one issue I remember that came up in 1969, the idea that the specialist should have the same amount of time as a regular classroom teacher and somehow be built into that. Otherwise, they shouldn't be making the same salary we were. And that was something that went through the union. My wife would probably know more about it than I do, but I was on the peripheral at that point. But I guess some people thought I had some good ideas because they made me the alternate in 1969, my second year teaching there in third grade. And and I attended some of the BTA meetings, and man, I tell you, you talk about chaos, and everybody has an opinion. Everybody has to be. Shirley Seiden was the president at the time. Karen, I think, was on the executive board doing something. I didn't know who she was. So I couldn't even pronounce her last name to begin with, so I forgot about it. Joe Piombo was the chief delegate. He was going out with his wife Terry at the time, who was scampering around. And then I think Bob Farina was going to take over the presidency. So there was an election or something along. But these issues came up. And the other issues with the monitors was the coming in of the Title I monies and Art Brieger wanting to put aides in first grade classrooms to help identify the kids that needed and to be worked with, that needed the instruction, the extra instruction, because the district was getting money and they had to show a viable program for this. And that year was kind of really upsetting because a lot of the teachers, the first grade teachers, needed the extra help and a pair of hands. But a lot of the secondary people who were in the union didn't know what was going on as far as that's concerned. All they saw was an encroachment on what would soon happen to be differentiated staffing, because that was one of the big things was also being talked about. Summerhill came out with the open classroom, all the different degrees of how people would be differentiated throughout the day, their tasks, their assignments, and then, of course, their pay would also be different and differentiated. So the union, rightfully so, when you look at it, in hindsight, put up a roadblock on that, and they really didn't want any part of it at that particular point. So Brieger then felt that we don't want to lose the money coming in from Title I. I guess they spoke to the union on that, and there was a compromise set. So what happened is the reading consultants now would take these aides and use them as a reading lab pullout type of thing, and they'd had to come up with a curriculum, but yet these people couldn't teach. They had to be supervised by the reading consultant in a teaching scenario, but they couldn't be teachers. So it happened in 1970, Charlotte Gross went out on a sabbatical, and Chuck Pulio decided that I should become the reading consultant, even though I had no credentials or anything. I said, "What are you doing to me?" So he says, "Don't worry about it. I looked at your background, etc." He had Ray Fournier, Brieger came over, and Forster Hoff to watch me in my observations. And these people in the building were saying, "Oh my God, they want to get rid of this guy, because why are they having all these people over?" And I don't know. I'm naive. I don't know. All I know is I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm teaching 3 or 4 reading groups. I'm teaching 3 math groups, okay? And I'm staying after school trying to teach my kids through Merrill Linguistics how to read. So they were saying that they were very impressed with the organizational and the classroom management aspect, so that down the road, this guy could probably be an administrator, which is management. So I go home and I tell my father, says, "That's the ticket. See, you'll be a manager now." My mother said, "See, I told you, Al. He knew what he was doing." Well, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just having fun at the time. I was getting a paycheck, and I was having fun. And I could go and spin off like I am now, I'm sure boring you, and boring the kids with history and science and all this other stuff. So I was having a grand old time. So the challenge now was to have 12 people who were hired as aides, okay, and to work the kids, identify the kids through the Houghton Mifflin levelized programs on the elementary level, who was doing poorly. Now, of course, you had to get past the first aspect of the teachers thinking that, well, those kids are doing poorly, but that doesn't mean that I made them do poorly. So we're trying to tell them, well, it's not a reflection on you. I mean, you didn't give birth to these kids. You didn't have, you weren't with them from kindergarten through first or second or third grade if you're a 4th grade teacher, okay? Sometimes, even though the transiency wasn't bad back then, you still had a lot of kids coming in with lack of skills.
Was this more than just reading skills? This was across the board?
No, this was honed in. It had to be structured in such a way that these aides were only going to do tasks assigned through the reading consultant in the area of reading and language arts. They were not to go anywhere else, and that was critical in order to get this thing to fly. And with that, Jack Finan, who was in charge of the ESEA monies, okay, he then was able to tap into funds, and I mean, I got trailer loads of stuff that you wouldn't believe. I wouldn't know what to do with this stuff now. And we gave them all out to the teachers as extra, you know, they considered extra work in some cases. But I said, you know, look, if everybody's doing 2 or 3 reading groups, and which is what everybody knew, and that's what you were doing, here's all the materials to fit in. And you have a whole complement of this stuff. And then Puleo came in, and with Nanini, they were big on individualized instruction, which was an extreme, okay, that you could individualize your packages and program these things and run your classroom management in such a way that you're almost doing the team teaching approach, but you're doing grouping in a more sophisticated level from the 2nd grade on up, that this could actually happen. And I was experimenting with that. And some of the guys that came on board, Bill Hutnick, Bob DeSoto, Steve Milner, Doug Lennon, of course, those people were really involved. Ernie Albee, another name from the past. They were big on trying to fit all this in to see how this could be done. And we used to spend hours after school just trading off on lessons and index cards. And then we got to the point of saying, if we had like computers, and if you could do some programs and we got a videotape similar to this, but it was the old reel-to-reel. So we used to make, for social studies, because now after Charlotte came back in 70, I went back to the classroom, but I moved up to 5th grade. So in 1971, I was a 5th grade teacher, and I wanted to do eyewitness news with Bill Butel and Roger Grimsby. Well, I had 2 kids that looked like those guys in my class. Thomas Groneman, who's now the chief detective over here at the 3rd Precinct, and David Goldstein, who's Jack Goldstein's son. And they did the Roger Grimsby, Bill Butel. Now, if you saw Bill Butel, it's real tall. Well, David was real tall with the glasses. And Roger Grimsby was like the guy with the hair out here. You know, he was a real wise guy. Well, that was Tommy Groneman. So we did that, and we did all of our history lessons in a weekly events type of thing, and we taped it. And the kids loved it. We had horses, because one of the kids had a horse down on over by the Brentwood Country Club. She brought the horse on. She was Paul Revere, and we interviewed Paul Revere, the real story behind Paul Revere. And it was interesting because the horse did something right there on camera, so it made it really look fun, you know, and real. So, you know, and we cleaned it up and what have you, you know, whatever. But, you know, we had a good time. And we also Puleo and Nanini also decided that the University of Massachusetts in Amherst came out with a criteria reference testing program that could be superimposed on this reading and maybe math program, so that we could take a look at the subgroupings as we're working with these kids and reporting back to the state and the federal government showing progress. But we wanted to have the kids tested consecutively, maybe once every month or so, in order to show what the progress looked like. And more importantly, if the kids weren't doing well in a certain area, it would alert the teacher, spend a little bit more time here, and then we would buy the materials to help supplement or put the aids in a certain area. So we started to expand a little bit beyond the reading and got a little bit into math. So 6 of us were sent up to the University of Massachusetts the summer of '71. Chuck Puleo, Pete Demento, and Lou Latito, 3 target schools. And Chuck took me. Lou Latito took Ed Harris, and Pete Demento took Tony Spitznagel, reading consultant out of South. And we all went up there for 6 weeks, and we learned everything we had to. We got back and found out we had to spend another 6 weeks putting the program together for the district, which was called at the time the Brentwood Educational System for Testing, which was horrible because it sounded like you're only doing this to test kids. And that evolved into the CAM. So we were the 6 godfathers of the CAM program in math. Oh. And that started in '71. So we got a stipend of $1,000 to be the team leader for the intermediate grades. It was meant for grades 4, 5, and 6. They were going to work in those three grades initially. And I stayed as a 5th grade teacher and a math team leader in '72. And then in '73, for the year '73, '74, Charlotte retired, the reading consultant, and then Chuck installed me in as the reading consultant and also said, we're also going to make you the math person. So you're going to do a double header. And that's what the other 2 buildings did. and best evolved into CAM, which right to this day is the one saving grace for the district on the state competency test. In the meantime, a little known guy, or maybe he wasn't so little known, at the north end of town in Northeast, named Bill Cowan, okay, he was looking at incorporating the CAM into reading. And we never think you could do that because reading is so nebulous, and the vocabulary changes, and all the literal and the interpretive skills, they can be defined somewhat, but they're again too nebulous. Where math is pretty much concrete, and you know what you're doing there. But what had happened was he was lobbying for an assistant principal in '74. And the district started to contract. And '72 was the height of the 22,000 kids. And every year I was there up until that point, Chuck was hiring new teachers. 1973 came around, and it was the first of the excessing. And the teachers were excessed. First in, first out. Or last in, I should say. Last in, first, you were first out. And in '74, they were looking to close down East Elementary School and make it into a 7th grade center, because they had the split sessions on a high school and a junior high, and they were looking to alleviate split sessions on the junior high level. So the 7th grade center was going to help. It would also help save administrative jobs and teaching jobs if you were certified to move over as 6th grade teachers into 7th grade areas of certification.
South Elementary closed about that time.
No, that was still left open. Yeah, that became the Maslow School, the alternative high school down the road under Conrad Follansbee. But Chuck was promoted to the 7th grade principal spot. You're right. South then was closed because Pete Demento came over to become the principal at Twin Pines in '74. The community, was some politics involved there with Entenmann's. Entenmann's wanted to buy it or not buy it. The community was saying, we don't like this excessing of our teachers, and the class sizes were going up. Find some money. Can't you sell that building or what have you? And there was all kinds of nonsense going on. So I became I was nominated to be Bill Cowan's assistant principal in '74. So I moved over to Northeast as an assistant principal. And I worked there from '74 until '77. And then there was more contraction going on in the district. And there was also at that point the teachers union stating, because it was now under Jack Zuckerman, that if teachers were being excessed, there's certainly too many administrators, especially on a secondary level, the way they were looking at it. There was like an administrator for every floor, all right? So G. Guy DiPietro Nannini left in '72, and then G. Guy came on as the superintendent. So he wanted to have union peace, so he said, okay, we have to show some movement of getting rid of some administrators through attrition, and we're going to cut elementary assistant principals. But what they had, the one thing BIPSO had was a sabbatical thing. So you put somebody out on sabbatical for a year, and then you could rotate somebody in there to take their place and then have somebody else take their place. So I was offered the job as assistant principal at West Junior High School in 1970, the 76-77 school year. And so then I bounced over to West Junior High. And that was interesting, meeting Jeff Dwyer, George Pittman, Bill Lapp, a lot of the secondary people that were really fine teachers, because that was really a good building. When I was there, it was 1,000 kids. When I left in '84, we were down to about 800, 700. So it was still happening in terms of the turnover, et cetera. But when I was up there, I learned a lot of administration stuff. I learned also that I wasn't the bright, fresh kid on the block that knew all the answers, that this was a whole nother scenario and a whole different mentality in working with teachers. I don't want to have 3 reading groups in their 40-minute class. They have D track, they have C track, they have A track. And we decided to work with the guidance department and say, if a kid was really good in English but rotten in math, why put the kid in a D track math and a D track English? You're stereotyping the kid. Why don't you split the tracks? So they decided that they would start doing that. And that worked out pretty well. And I had some interesting guidance counselors that I worked with over there. Chico Franco, let's see, Tom McCavanaugh. Yeah, I'm saying that right. Tom McCavanaugh, he's since retired. Tom McDonough, Hal Sabatko. He still would go out the window with his violin, and I always wondered why he did that. But whatever turned them on, if he, that kind of thing. Carol Rupert, And I'm sure there was a few others I just can't remember at this point, okay? And it was a good, solid crew of people. Kevin McNicholas, Mary Jo Schmidt, Betsy Nebraskis. We decided we'd form a core group of teachers to take the worst of the kids out of Hemlock and Southwest. Those were our two feeder schools that came in. Go down in the spring and do an orientation to all the 6th grade classes. Take it on the road, do a little videotaping of all our activities. So the videotaping followed me through. And we spent an hour and a half in each of the schools with the 6th grade kids, showing them what was the preparation for coming up to the 7th grade. And at that time, we'd meet with Joe Graff and Austin Harney, the two principals, and ask who was their worst 6th grade students. We have a program that we want to put them in to see if we can prevent them from dropping out when they hit the age of 16 and giving us a lot of problems from 7th grade to 9th grade. So that's how this little core program. It also saves teaching staff. See, that was the other side. DPHO allowed this to happen where some of the teachers, Eddie Hartman, have 10 kids in a class for a couple of periods. And we double up the periods. So I'd have 2 social studies, 2 English periods, 2 math periods, and then rotate it. How the kids sign a waiver? They didn't know what they were signing. They're lucky they were still in school. We didn't kick them out on suspension. I waived my right to music, or I waived my right to art. Unless you were artistically inclined, then we'll give you double art. And then when they hit 16, because a lot of them were retained and, they would fail or what have you, we wouldn't go knocking on their doors at their houses, okay? We'd have Marty Efron, who was in charge of night school at the time, come up, and also Bill Leiterman, who was in charge of the, Bob Leiterman, who was in charge of the work study program, and try to patch together a program for some of the problem kids so that they can get part-time jobs in the community and still attend school at night. And if they did well at night, Marty then would give them the blessing they can go back to day school. So, we did a lot of little creative things.
How did you get to your final assignment?
Well, in '84, there was an opening back at the elementary level. So Guy had asked me, do you have enough of junior high? Because all positions are locked out. Nobody's retiring. So do you want to stay up here or do you want to go down to the elementary and take your chances? So I said, well, I'm up for something different. So I went down to Southwest and worked with Austin Harney. And just at that time in '84, they were opening up the full-day kindergarten program in the district. Enrollment started to move up now. They hired all of their permanent sub-teachers and then some. And then in '85, Guy came out with a early incentive. And we lost like 15 teachers at Southwest on the incentive. So again, fresh blood, new blood was coming in. As kids started to increase, more teachers were coming in. The permanent subs now became like the AAA club so that you could have them in training and then bring them up. And then if they didn't do well, put them back down for a year or a semester. At least that's how we did it. I mean, we never, we were always upfront and honest with people, Austin and I. So that paid off for a lot of them. Some of the ones that didn't make the cut, c'est la vie. Some of the ones that didn't make the cut but got another chance, they thanked us and they became solid teachers, maybe in another building or what have you. But at least you had the creativity to do something that way, which in the past you never did. And the rest of the teaching staff saw that. So they saw that they're really, these administrators looking to improve us, not to just shoot us down and get us out. But that's always been our philosophy, at least my philosophy. Even surprisingly, with some people that hear this, even Chuck Pulio's philosophy. When Chuck I followed his career, when he got up to the secondary level, something happened there, okay? And he couldn't deal with it any longer. And his whole personality changed. But before that, when he was on the elementary level, he was superb. I mean, he was all for the kids and all for the teachers. I still remember his going away party. It was the best party I've ever attended. Teachers had a kick line, a chorus line, the whole 9 yards. I mean, they didn't do that for somebody just to get rid of them. So, but in any case, 84, 85, the kindergarten center started to bloom, and I was put in charge of the K-2 section of the building. So that's where I really learned to become principal and run the whole thing. So this thing kind of worked out. And then in '92, I had the opportunity to go back to Twin Pines as principal. And I said, wow, so you come full cycle. And what a difference. I still had people that, Mary White, who helped me, okay, Charlie Smith, Doug Lennon went on to 6th grade at that point, okay, Karen Bloomfield, they were still there. Tony Spitznagel, who I went away with to the University of Amherst, he's the reading consultant. So it was a very interesting combination. It was. And when I was there in 92, I had 520 kids. And every year, 60 to 80 more every year kept coming in until we got up. And we had an extension put on the building. Then we had portables put on the building. And from what I understand now, my successors are telling me there'll be 2 more classrooms attached to the building permanently. So that building will probably go up to about 1,000 kids. What a difference. But now all the programs, you got the resource room for kids that really needed it from a tutorial viewpoint. That didn't come into the district until 78, 79. And there were a lot of bodies, okay, that were put in front to get that program in because of the politics between G. Guy DiPietro and Howard Brodsky. Everybody was doing it for the kids, but they were personalizing it, and the kids weren't getting the services. But finally, somehow it all got worked out. So you had a resource room. You had the ESL program, a bilingual program. You had whatever help in speech, Ronnie Parachi. She also worked with me. Psychologist, okay, with the testing. All those people that I look back in 1969 with people saying, these specialists, they don't do anything. Now they're working their tails off. I mean, not only are they working there, they're working harder in some cases than most of the classroom teachers are, because they're not only testing the kids in our building and counseling them and working with all of the ancillary services to keep the kids straight, but they're also doing it in other buildings to pinch hit wherever they can. Of course, the special ed population just blew up. And a lot of people wonder about that, but it was, again, the federal government with their project idea. Go out and search and find, use the money that we're allocating for special ed, and we're going to give it to the district. So that was out there in the 70s. And unless the district participated and saw that some of these kids that were giving teachers problems belonged in certain categories, take advantage of it. Don't block it. These kids aren't going to go away. And the PINS program is going to go down to 18. It's not going to be 16 anymore, so you can't kick them out of school. And night school isn't going to be your answer because that's only going to be a shelter. And it's not going to be the right thing for these kids. The alternative school, that was another reason why they made that. Try to get the kids out of the high school and give them something to function with. So they gave that to Conrad Follansbee. And the guys over there did what they could with the kids. But all of that, again, was funded through the federal government and the state government with monies that were available. And the key was to get committed people to use the money properly that were dedicated for those kids, not just to say, well, I have this program and we're spending it and you know, the kids are forgotten. So
you have an incredible memory for specifics and for names and dates and places. You're astounding.
Well, I had a lot of fun for 34 years.
34 years?
34 years.
And your first salary was $6,800?
$6,800. And then my second year salary, it was $69 because I got a $1,000 raise. I found out about those in-service courses that you could take. But I still had to go to college because if you remember, I walked in with only 9 credits. So I had to take my 30 credits. And then somebody told me, not the same guy that got me involved in this, because God bless his heart, you know, he's still teaching in Brooklyn for all I know, okay? He said, you know, if they're pulling in a direction of administrative courses, administrative comes under education. So you can get duly certified. So what happened is that I got triply certified. I got my N through 6, my SAS, and my SDA, all for 36 credits. Yeah, I was lucky. And I did it not in one institution because, again, I was kind of weird. If I didn't like the way you were presenting your subject matter, I don't want to sit in your class. I don't have time to waste. I got other things to do. So I go to Hunter, and I remember bringing the Merrill linguistics books down to this kid who was 15 years old, okay, in 4th grade. And this is a summer project in terms of reading, elementary reading. And I taught him how to read in 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Index cards, the whole 9 yards. What were those little Mills, not the Mills analogy thing. There was that little decoding thing with cards. I can't remember the name of it. Glass analysis. We used to do and then you had Distar that came in. So the glass analysis helped out. And he said, what is this thing? I said, well, give this whole box, make a copy, okay, keep them in your house and go over them whenever you can, but give them to your teacher. And, you know, whoever your teacher is going to be next year, and you could show your teacher that you know how to read and that this is something that you could do for some of your friends in the neighborhood if you'd like to. And that's stuff that I would do. And then I went to CW Post, Hofstra, and a few of the other, St. John's. I kind of played with the idea of something.
That you were working very hard as soon as your as soon as your feet hit the pavement, but you were working just as hard the last few weeks of your leave. You haven't taken much of a rest in 34 years.
Well, that's how you keep young. That's how you and I look so young. Because you've been doing this for a while now, right?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Alex, I want to stop about the experience, which is great because you've painted a beautiful picture. But I want to go back and ask you about another pride, the source of pride of yours, and that is your son.
Okay.
And you've continued the name Alex again in
right.
the next generation. Tell me about.
Okay. Well, there was another step before Karen and Alex. I had met somebody in Twin Pines in '69, Kathleen Newman, who was a teacher, and it was a six-month whirlwind type of thing. We were young, we were kind of immature, and we got married. And we had 2 kids because we practiced what the church preaches and got stuck for it, right? I don't want to say you got stuck for it because you got 2 kids coming out of that. I still remember the thermometer and the little graph over the bed. None of that crap works. So anybody out there, if you want to do birth control, forget about it. It doesn't work, okay? So Peter came in '71, and Alexandra, that's my daughter, in '73, and marriage didn't work out. And I met Karen, and that we clicked. She's a lot more mature than I am, and I needed somebody mature to kind of, So we got married in 1978, and we had visitation rights with my other 2 children. And we had thought that perhaps if the gods are shining in the right direction, what have you, we get custody of 2, but that was not to happen. So Karen said, I'm getting old, biological clock is ticking, so we really should have our own family. So Alex came on the scene in '83. Yeah, Valentine's Day gift.
Isn't that a beautiful gift?
Yeah. So
he's off in college now.
Yep, he went through the elementary schools here in the East Islip in the area, and I went to St. Anthony's out in Huntington. And he never really knew what he wanted to do, which is typical. But yet he liked computers and things along those lines. So he thought he'd go to Wentworth Institute of Technology up in Boston. So he was up there last year, and he gave it a shot. He liked you could love the campus. I mean, it's in Boston. I mean, with Northeastern across the street, the Fine Arts Museum right across the street. It's one of the colleges of the Fenway. There's 5 of them. Simmons, there's a arts college up there, a teaching college, a nursing college, all those in the same area. And then there's Cambridge right across the river, and Fenway Park is only about 4 or 5 blocks away. So a beautiful area. He liked the kids and everything, but he couldn't stand 1 or 2 of the courses, which I kind of predicted. It's all math and all science. You can go out of your mind. And he said, I don't see myself programming for the rest of my life.
Are the kids all going to see this tape?
I don't know who's going to see this tape.
You want to say something about each one of them, just in case they do down the road?
Well, Peter and Alexandra, they went through a lot of stress in their lives, and I'm very proud of them in terms of they've gone through it. And Peter is 31 years old, will be 31 in October, and my daughter just recently got married, so I'm wishing her luck down in Richmond. Okay. And Alex, of course, is living with us, so he's got to put up with me for another 4 years at least. So, and I'm very proud of him. I mean, he's taking care of a house down in Florida right now by himself, and 4 cats that we just dropped off on him. So,
do any of the children have any qualities or talents or abilities that you know were in the family, either on your mother's side or your father's side? Have they come?
Well, Alex is a hard worker, but he procrastinates like I do, believe it or not. And he also has dropped the hints that he may want to get into teaching, and he may want to get into business. Now, gee, this is the exact same thing that I was going through when I was. It sounds familiar to me, and I didn't say a word about any of this stuff to him. Okay, Peter has always been pragmatic because he had to survive that way. But he majored in economics. He went up to Providence for his 4 years, and then he wanted to be a professional volleyball player. Now, I always envisioned myself a professional stickball player, but I got out of that very quickly, and I found something that was just as good, but I can hit the ball further, and that's golf. See, you don't really care if it goes into the hole. The thrill is getting up there and whacking that ball and seeing it go over. Only a true stickball player could appreciate that feeling. So you don't care what happens afterwards. I mean, the score is good. If you can do the other stuff, that's fine. But man, when you can hit a ball over 4 Graytons, okay, or 4 sewers, and you have the guys just, wow, that's great. You know?
I have to digress because you brought this up. There are quite a few administrators, former administrators, teachers from the district that have a passion for golf. Do you ever connect with any of those people?
Yes, for the ones that enjoy the game for what it is and do not try to give advice to everybody else while we're playing and have a good time, we make the connection. But there are some of them that take it too seriously, and you know, and you're competing against yourself. It's not anybody else, and you can't go out there with an ego.
When you were growing up, who, besides your mother and father, who were the strong adult influences in your life?
My mother's mother, my grandmother, she always kind of allowed me to go over to her house. We were in the same tenement building, and then she was one tenement building over when we moved into a larger apartment. As my sister and I got older, so we had our own bedrooms. But I could go over there on weekends and kind of hang out, watch the Twilight Zone, watch Sea Hunt, stay up till 11 o'clock on a Saturday or whatever. Or if I was going out to the movies with some friends, I can always, you know, she wouldn't tell what time I got in or whatever. So she was cool. I liked her. Yeah. I was always busy in a sense that.
How did she influence you?
She was kind. She was considerate, and she also, at the same time, always was accepting of all my friends that came in, any color, shape, nationality, what have you. Always would, you know, can I make you dinner? Can I give you something, or what have you? Where some of my other family, they had their own prejudices, they had their own situations, you know, because of experiences that they had in their lives. So, you know, and I would just observe and watch.
Was the neighborhood that you grew up in the Bronx demographically uniform?
Well, my block was white. Mm-hmm. And the next block was black, and the block after that was Hispanic.
Wow.
And that's just the way the setup was.
Yes.
But you'd have to go through all 3 blocks to get to certain buses that would take you to the beach, or that would take you to Jerome Avenue, or to go to Yankee Stadium. You'd have to walk. So I made it a pleasure just going around, just waving at everybody, and just hoping that people, and then some of the old timers would come over, the blacks and the Hispanics. One of my friends, taught me how to fly a kite during a thunderstorm up on a roof. Milton, still remember this to his day. And then, of course, I said, this isn't too cool of an idea, so we better get downstairs. But he was very good. And also, when I was in high school, my father wanted me to go to work to learn how to work with my hands, etc. So I went to a place, Lady Rose Lingerie, a warehouse. It's in St. Mary's Park, 147th Street. And I had to take the bus every morning during the summer to go there. And a lot of the people on the bus would go into that area, but they were all black Muslims. They were all from the group that went with Malcolm X. So they would offer me the newspapers to read, etc. Now, I'm a history thing, so I like to get into Islam, into all these other things. And before I know it, I was an honorary member of the Black Muslims, you see. So, which I thought was, you could connect with anybody. So it probably bored them to death with all my talking like I'm doing now, but we all got along. It was enjoyable.
What was your favorite family holiday? Or was it
Thanksgiving?
Okay.
Yeah. We'd have some of the members of the family that we hadn't seen for a variety of reasons, and they'd come over to my mother's house, and she'd have the turkey and everything else, and then we'd watch the football game, and then I would watch some of my family members get into their thing about politics or whatever.
Yeah, so your mother's mother was the magnet that
yeah.
Did that change when she
Well, yeah, she passed away in 62, and 63, 64. Again, I was in the tail end of high school, and I was also now working part-time. So I would see some of my relatives at Christmas. So Christmas became the next center. Okay. And then we would bet on the NFL would have their championship game right around the week after Christmas. So we'd bet on certain things, always win.
And what about now? What about now? Is there family?
No, it's not. No, I have a cousin in Pauling, and I maybe we would talk to each other maybe once a year, if even that. She has a lot of medical problems, and everybody's scattered. But the other members, I have a cousin, Carolyn, who was on my mother's side, and her mom is in a nursing home right now. She lives in a city in the Bronx, so we communicate periodically. But other than that, really hasn't been.
I've asked this question of everyone, and I'm going to throw it at you here. Are you a morning person or an evening person?
I'm a morning person. I like to get up in the morning, and then by the afternoon, I like to relax. Mm-hmm. That's it.
What about, Alex, what about the aromas that trigger a memory? I mean, a room, a time of year, food. Are there certain aromas that trigger associations for you or memories for you? A certain, I don't know how else to phrase the question.
Well, I can smell my wife's sauce, and it's just as good as my Aunt Louise's sauce in one of my father's brother's wives over in, and they're both dead. When we would go over once a year, because my father didn't particularly care for this younger brother of his, I always thought he was a funny man. And I think there was a little problem also because she was Italian, and there was that racial kind of thing still going on in the family. But she always would make lasagna and meatballs. And so anytime that happens, I can always say, hey, Aunt Louise, she always used to do a good deal, you know. And Uncle Eddie, he was always cool. Of course, turkey. I remember those turkey dinners with my grandmother. So that brings back some fond memories.
You mentioned before, oh no, I'm sorry, you didn't mention this. I wanted to ask you and it slipped away from me. Teachers that have had an impact on your life, or educators, I could put it broadly, people that you remember because of the impact that they've had.
Pulio, because I mean he gave me my first job and he kind of guided me through my first couple of years. Doug Lennon, he was interesting, but he also was very dedicated and hardworking.
Are there any people that you remember from grade school yourself when you were a student, or in high school or college, that made a difference?
I think we were all trying to survive at that point. The nuns, of course, some of them were encouraging, some of them were terrible. They had their own hang-ups, which you kind of knew after a while. In high school, Mr. Sweeney, who was a history teacher, as it turned out, when I worked in Wallach's, his wife worked in the same department, and I didn't realize that. And we got together a couple of times and had dinner. And I was a teacher at the time. And he said, you know, I kind of knew you would be. You were a real creep in the classroom, okay? And sometimes you weren't focused on what you're supposed to be doing. But you had intelligent questions when you were on. And I always wondered whatever happened to you. So I'm very happy that, you know, you're going in this direction. And I never really kept in touch at that point because I thought he would have been really astounded that I was an administrator and then a principal, you know, and now retired, what have you. But he was good.
I want to ask you, how was it being married to somebody who was active in teachers union organization? It's a very assertive woman, a very strong woman, and you being an administrator and educator and wearing a different hat professionally. How is it like coming home at the end of the day and living with somebody who sees things from such a different reality?
Well, my father was always very strong and assertive, so I did the same thing with Karen as I did with my father. I ignored her. So she would go and vent and say her things, and then I would listen. And I would say a few things in terms of what would annoy me, you know, in my day, and she would give me some other insight from another viewpoint. And then that's how we I don't even want to use the term coexist, but that's how we've worked.
But it works.
Yeah.
And it's working.
Absolutely. Yeah. We don't infringe on, and we really don't bring business home. You know. That's the point. Yeah. I mean, there are certain teachers, if you've been there and you know what you have to go through as teachers, because I'm still a teacher, even though you have the title administrator, and working with the kids and working and trying to get over the hump with the families and getting their trust and their credibility, because even though the group of people we have in Brentwood now are very fond of education, they don't trust the society because for a lot of reasons. And they don't use the old things that we used to hear from the old white group that was here, that we only work half a year and we're getting paid too much and all this other stuff. I haven't heard that in the last 15 years. If anything, I'm hearing about maybe the lack of dedication or a lot of dedication if you have this. And this is impressive, and I have to shake your hand and God bless you and all this other stuff. So the people nowadays are looking for what our role is really supposed to be. And if you do the right thing and you treat it as a vocation, not as something that you're out of here at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, and not take the extra step and make a phone call, even if it's a positive thing to say, then I think we're missing something. But
for 34 years, you have been obviously very dedicated in all the work that you've done at various levels. Brentwood is a unique community, and what is it that you see that is perhaps the most remarkable thing about Brentwood?
That with all the diverse background and all the experiences and all the egos, that everybody works together when push comes to shove to get in the final analysis to get the job done. And they know that our work really is not getting any easier, especially with the baggage that a lot of our clientele are bringing in. But yet, it didn't really bother me in a sense that I grew up with all of this around me in the South Bronx. And for years, I've told my faculty, you're living in the South Bronx without the tenement buildings. And that's not scary, okay? That means that a lot of these people are very needy. The families are needy, and what they need is your love and your dedication, and they want their kids to be happy. So if their kids come into school and you make them happy, you still teach them and you still guide them, and if they do something wrong, you got to correct them, but you can do it in such a way that they feel at ease and they'll correct themselves out of it. You don't have to scold them. They get all that at home. You don't have to yell at them. They hear that all the time. You don't want to be sarcastic to them because they know from their own self-esteem, that they're not doing the right thing sometimes. They don't want to have that reinforced, but do something kind to them so when they go home, they're happy, and if they're happy, the parents are happy. But the minute you do something stupid, and that happens to all of us, or say something wrong, that parent will be up here because the parent's going to defend the kid from all the guilt and all the association of the fact that I never provided for my kid. Now I'm going to defend my kid and become that kid's hero. I'm going to take it out on you. And it's indefensible. So you try to teach them that, and also say, and it's not meant as an insult to the community, okay? But we're really in a Peace Corps, man. This is the Peace Corps. We're not drilling wells for water, okay? We're trying to drill thoughts into kids' heads that this is the way, and to families that they know education's important, help them along. Help them, and also back off when you say they got to do homework every night. Try to get some of the 15 or 20 minutes in a silent period of time, and so they're not annoyed with all the chores you're going to ask them to do. So if you say it that way, the parents understand. But the minute you come up and say, they got to do the homework, black and white, boom, that's it. The parents are going to listen to you because there's other things on the agenda that have to be done. And you don't want them taking out their frustrations on the kids, and the kids come to school. All of my 4th grade and 5th grades, the last 4 or 5 years, all the teachers rotate their lunch periods for detention. And it's no longer detention, it's a joke. The kids wait for that. They don't want to go out and play. That's when they want to do their homework. That's the only time that they have. They go home, there's other stuff going on. And they want as a kid to be a kid. They should have an hour of TV or an hour to go out and play with their friends. So so the teacher's saying, this is amazing. I said, we say, don't you want to go out? No, we'd rather stay here with you. And while you're reading, we're doing, and it's quiet and it's solitude. It's amazing. But that's the selling point is, again, this is third world, man. This is Peace Corps. And you get paid for it. And you get extra fringe benefits. I mean, you got to be on top of the world here, thinking that all the bad things we did in our lives, man, I'm collecting credit chips. So I'm hoping to collect, man, with my credit card,
What's the thing that you're the most proud of all the programs, of all the accomplishments that you certainly could credit to your?
Well, I would say putting together a really good staff over at Twin Pines over the last couple of years, and having the honor and being allowed to pick my successor and also the person's successor with the blessings of the superintendent and the school board. That was basically a free pick. I mean, when you think about that, I mean that's real. How often does that happen? And it's not like you had to make a deal, or I would do that was probably the best.
Why did you decide that it was time?
I told you at the beginning of this conversation.
No, we did that off camera.
Oh, we did that off camera. I don't want to collect any more lunch money for Cy Lockman in the lunch program, man. I mean, that guy's got like 10 secretaries, and they can hire some kind of a dunning agency to go after the parent, not expect us to harass the kids, because that's what it ends up doing. The lunch people, they don't mean to, but they end up harassing the kids for the 25 cents that they owe, or the $1 or the $2 or $3, and it's just a crime. So, there are ways of doing this somehow. I really don't know what the answer to it is. Put them all on free, put them all on reduced. You can't do that because the federal government's down your case auditing people. But hire someone to work with the buildings to do the letters that we do through the office, because we sent out a lot of dunning notices under our name, under my name, and parents then. And I say this in a letter: we're not attacking the kids for the sins of the parents. Okay, we're going to attack you. You pay the money. This is the way it is, because I don't want to end up having to take it out of my pocket to pay the federal government, and that's what they're looking at. And if you don't want to do that, make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and have the kid come in, but let the kid eat. But more importantly, let the kid eat in peace without having to worry about the cashier saying something, and they have to say something. It's not like the kids are trying to beat the system for a quarter. They're so scatterbrained. It's in their desk or it's in their pocketbook, and they don't even know it. But these are little kids.
You haven't had a chance to rest, really, since you left. You left, what was the official day of your leave?
June 28th. Of course, the weekend was the 29th and the 30th. And
you almost immediately decided that you were going to relocate.
Well, we're going out. Yeah, that was a year ago. We decided, and
you began to plan it immediately. You sold your house.
Well, yeah, we had to take advantage of that because of the housing market at this point. And one of the homes that we have down in Florida didn't rent because we do annual rentals, not seasonal. And it was just a slow market because of all the events that happened. People afraid to travel. The climate was warm up in the Midwest, which was where we get a lot of prospective renters who want to come down, see what the island looks like and what Southwest Florida looks like, spend a year, and then decide if they want to buy a house someplace or rent or whatever. So that's our clientele. So it didn't happen for us with one of the homes. So I mentioned to Karen, I said, rather than tie up the people here waiting for a house that's being built and all the problems that go along with that, with timing, and then maybe lose these prospective buyers, and God only knows what will happen. Okay, if you can't get someone, then we're stuck up here. Let's move into that house that we didn't rent. And I said, we'll take it off the market in July. And Alex then has to make a decision. Does he want to stay in Boston, or does he want to come down with us? If he wants to stay in Boston, God bless him. Yeah, there's planes that come out of Logan that will fly down to Fort Myers. Not a problem. And and we have a car. I mean, if there's something happens, it's a two-day ride. I could be up there or what have you. No big deal. Or you can come down if you really want to put yourself through, that with us for another 4 years. And
my point is that you have been very busy in the last 2 months.
Yeah, there'll be a time for rest.
Okay.
Yeah, we have we're going to start planning once we're in the new house. I told Karen, and hopefully that'll be in early spring. We're going to take a trip finally, either Alaska or Iceland. Wonderful. That would be the time of year, because you don't want to go down there in the summer and hang out too long. So we'll do that. And
can I ask you to reflect just for a moment again on your career? Is there any one thing that you can point to that gave you the most pleasure?
The most pleasure? Teaching kids to read, and having and doing whatever you could do for parents, solving some of their, making the road easier for some of the parents, especially as a principal, because you have the power to do that. and you use it wisely. You go to their homes on weekends. You go to their homes in the evening.
Did you do that?
Yeah. And because we had some troubled kids, and I had to follow through on it because they were of the mind that these things aren't going to happen. Nobody does this. You know, we came from the city. We came from Haiti. Nobody goes to the house. A, you got to be nuts to travel in Brentwood at night. And B, you're going to come into some stranger's house on a phone call. So this guy's either got to be whacked or there's got to be something maybe good with him. So I got a lot of blessings in the last 3 or 4 years. But anytime you do, not a favor, but just do your job. Just do your job, make it easier for somebody's road. They really appreciate that. And the kids pick up on that, because my theory also, and I tell my faculty, the kids hear from the parents. If the parents are alienated about the teachers, they're going to talk about this, and the kids pick up on it. If the parents talk about teachers or administrators in a kind way, the kids pick up on that also, and they're going to tell you that. They're going to let you know. So the last month, I mean, I had kids saying, you know, my folks think like you're a hero, man. You know, I said, I don't want to hear that. You know, I said, no. And my folks said, you'd be like that. You'd say you don't want to hear that because you're a very modest guy, Mr. Werner, you know. I said, well, you don't really know me, you know. But that stuff, I mean, that you've accomplished something, that you've touched somebody. So that's as good as teaching kids how to read, and they come and thank you.
Did you have heroes growing up?
Did I have heroes? A lot of my heroes were in history books. I could say that my father was a hero in terms of the line of work that he was in when he was in the fire department, and he'd take us down on a Friday afternoon when he was put in charge of the station by the captain. And he had to supervise the guys doing a drill in the middle of the street. The streets had to be closed off, and you see these guys running up the ladders, and they'd be timed and everything else like that. And that made me very proud that he had that responsibility, and that he had to put up with a lot of nonsense. He was kind of the lightning rod for the family. A lot of the times he would kind of do that on his own, and that kind of ticked people off. But many times he would help people in the family that couldn't help themselves, and they didn't realize it until later what he did for them. So I could say, yeah, I kind of admired those traits.
That may sound like a silly question, but do you talk to him?
He's in my dreams. Yeah, he comes back, and he kind of wants to be a buddy in terms of what we're doing down in Florida, or with Alex. Yeah, it's there in the dreams. Yeah, it's funny you should ask that. Yeah.
What are you going to miss most, Alex?
I'm going to miss the people up here. The experiences with the memories, because as we get older, the memories are going to start to. That's why I have the tape, because I can go over these names. You know, they start to fog. Mine starts to fog, and Karen showed me something yesterday in yesterday's credit union brochure that came out. You know, those pictures in it. Charlie Black, principal over at Northeast before Bill Cowan, and then he retired. And actually, Charlie went to Southeast, and then he retired, went down to Port Charlotte. And he was quoted as saying the importance of the credit union, because he came in here in the 1950s, and the credit union started in somebody's garage or basement or someplace. And he said, the thing I remember most about the credit union is my wife was pregnant, and I didn't get my paycheck as a teacher or whatever, okay? And I needed $300. And the credit union on that first year lent me $300, and it got by my wife's pregnancy and doctor's bills, et cetera. And I always remember that, because nobody would lend me $300. That was a lot of money at that time. They're only making maybe $3,400 a year, you know, at that stage of the game.
What's one of the best books you've ever read?
The Art of War. By
you are a history buff, aren't you?
Yeah.
Boy, yeah.
Well, that's how the world works.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would like to have accomplished that you didn't have time or didn't have? You couldn't do it before your life, but you would like to have seen it done.
Actually not. There was once a time in my life I wanted to aspire to bigger and greater things, maybe superintendent. But after seeing what I had to go through as principal, because there's a big difference even between assistant principal and principal. and seeing what the superintendent has to go through now, and I don't think I'd have the patience. I think I'd probably blow most of these people out of the office. I mean, like, what are you, crazy? You know, that type of thing. And God bless the administration is up there now. They have a finesse and art of dealing with all the different intricacies. Probably if I was still around, I would volunteer time to go up to the state education department and lobby whoever is in charge of the so-called scoring on these level 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, and tell them that if you're comparing this to having kids pass Regents test, your Regents is based and predicated on 65 or better. This is so nebulous, and all you're doing is reporting, having the newspapers report scores of passing, which is kids in levels 3s and 4s, which the company that draws up these tests switch over in 8th grade to level 3s equated to an 80%. When do you report only 80% or better on your Regents test to the public in the newspapers? And that's what they've done and perpetrated on the elementary level. So the parents look at this and they think anybody that scores a level 1 or 2 have failed. Well, level 1, yeah, you have failed. Level 2, though, that's 65 to 80. There's people still in there that have passed. And they are killing the schools and the competition and the pressures and pulling the hearts out of these 4th grade teachers because of that. Plus the insanity of having all those tests in the same grade.
What's the future of public education? Do we have to worry about where we're headed?
The future of in New York State, the future is predicated on how long Mills is going to be around. Because once Mills leaves, there'll be another change of regime, and there'll be a whole nother reflection. And perhaps somebody up there will figure out that every child has a right, or whatever that law is that the federal government has. It's a softer way. It's not any less of a stretch in terms of those kids performing, because it was meant for states, not like New York, that now wants to be the lead in Regents and this, that, and the other thing. And the leaders up there are forgetting. You're getting a whole different diverse population of economics and sociological structure that's a lot different than when mommy stayed home with the kids and you had 2 or 3 atomic family scenarios, and they didn't have as much TV and video and DVD and distractions then. So the best thing you had was the listening skills of the radio and the visual skills of a book. And that's what the pride was of all the New York City schools and all the New York State schools, or anybody else for that matter. But then all this diversion has come in, all the different language scenarios, all the different expectations on the economy, all of these people struggling, the federal government coming out with the law from the Supreme Court that even if a kid is in here illegally, dropped off in a parachute, your responsibility is to educate the kid. And if the kid drops off in a parachute in your backyard in Twin Pines as a 4th grade student, and the kid can speak some English and is not exempt, that kid has to pass the test or is marked against you as a 0. And the bilingual kids have to take the 5th grade social studies test, which is geared towards American history heavily because of, the patriotism aspect. And you mean to tell me that these kids, 20 of my 5th graders last year that came to me from 3rd world nations, don't have a clue on how to speak English. They still have to take this test because it's given in Spanish or Haitian or whatever. You mean to tell me while they were down there, they were learning about American history? They really cared about America? They were caring about where they're going to get their next meal or who's going to shoot them in the dark. So these kids can't be exempt for a year or 2 so that they can get their feet wet. One of the kids wrote, Thanksgiving sounds very interesting in this article in Spanish. Next year you can ask me about it because I'll study about the holiday, but I don't have a clue what Thanksgiving means. And that was the essay that the kid had to write about Thanksgiving. I said, good, leave it in there. See if someone's going to read it. And that's what we're talking about. So I think that will all be changed and modified. But you need strong people to go up there and lobby and not, kind of wring your hands. Oh my God, because they're going to report these anyway and what have you. And, let's leave it alone and it's going to go away. Well, they got to be told. They've been too far out of the classroom. They have no clue in terms of what's coming on down. And we're not saying do away with the testing. We're not saying that at all. We're saying use your intelligence, okay, to spread it out a little bit more. You can still have your 4-year tracking, okay, and don't give out those reports to the newspapers the way you're giving them out. and then do a follow-up the next year as those kids go into 5th grade, and you have a test in 5th grade that shows how those kids have done from 4th grade to 5th. You never get those results published in the newspaper to show that the school has improved. They forget about it.
So there's obviously a lot of things that you're not going to miss.
No. Well, I'm going down to Florida. That's a whole nother deal. Yeah, so I figure we're going to be joining a volunteer society for the four-legged wildlife type of thing and taking care of them, and then gradually ease into issues.
Do you have a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan?
I have a 5-day plan.
You have a 5-day?
Yeah, 5 days. So I can go golfing with my buddies on Sunday and then find another foursome down there. Live up to 5 days. That's enough.
I have one last question for you, and you don't have to answer this right away. Take a moment to think about it, because invariably I have forgotten to ask or didn't know enough to ask you a very important question. If you were in my chair here and you were going to ask yourself the one question that we haven't gone to, or one important question that you would like to answer before we finish this, think for a moment what it might be and answer it.
Well, it probably go back to a time when you feel, why do you get into the role that you're doing, the vocation that you're doing? Why did you get into this whole act? What led you into it? And with teaching, it's something that's internalized. It's just a feeling that you want to convey information. Maybe that's putting it on its primitive level through, in my case, it had been history. Convey that information to other people in a rational fashion and have them learn from it, because it's important. Teachers are the bearer of all the information that civilization knows. And you don't want to get me into this, because I know Karen will start giving me the high five here, okay, that when we go back millions of years ago, there's civilizations well beyond Atlantis, well beyond what we talk about, that have been destroyed through natural calamities. And it's going to happen to us. And it's going to happen to our survivors down the road, because that's just the way of the universe. But who's there to pick up the pieces and to convey what's going on so that we don't go back into barbaric times? Teachers, leaders that are not egotistical to want power. Teachers are the ones that really are your baseline, that have to keep it all together.
That said it. And the only thing remaining for me to say is to thank you, Alex, for being here today and for allowing us to do this.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be here. I consider it an honor. Thank you very much.